Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic on Sunday. Now, I had a very interesting email overnight from somebody called Angelina in Los Angeles. Now, I'm sure you guys are trolling me, but you know, you can let me dream. Angelina says she has been watching the channel for a couple of months and has improved massively at Sudoku. And to the point where she solved this puzzle recently and knows that she would not have been able to do it without what this channel's been teaching her. So she's asked us to have a go at it online, and well, for obvious reasons, I'm very prepared to do that, and you know, I hope it is a good puzzle. And yeah, as I say, whoever's trolling me, don't ruin my dreams. Let's have a look and see how this puzzle solves. Now, if you want to have a go at Angelina's puzzle, then just click on the link under the video. That'll take you to exactly the screen you can see on the screen at the moment, and you should be able to play interactively on your computers or your phones. Now let's look. You can see there's only one in the grid at the start, so I'm probably not going to start there. Let's have a look at twos. And we've got a couple of twos at the bottom, so there must be a 2 over on one of these two positions. Must be a 2 in one of these two squares because of these twos. We've got 2's at the top as well, so, and this 2 here, so this square is going to have to be a 2. And that means one of these squares is a 2. And straight away we get a nice pattern look. The 2's are locked into the same 2 rows in 2 different 3x3 blocks. So that allows us to immediately conclude something, look, about row 6 of the grid. Where can we place a 2 in row 6? We can't have 2's in any of these squares because of these 2's we've managed to lock into these positions, so the 2 must be in one of these 2 squares in row 6, and there's a 2 at the top there, so actually we're going to be able to write a 2 in. Immediately that rules out this square from being a 2, so get another 2 there as well. Right, let's move on to 3's. 3's here, and this 3 mean we can place a 3 there. 3's in one of these 2 positions at the bottom because of these 3's. Now actually this 3 is interesting. Let's have a look at this 3. You can see it rules out a 3 from those 3 squares, and although that doesn't allow us to pencil mark 3's in this bottom left hand box, it does mean the 3 is in one of those squares. Now these cells are all in row 8 and row 9, just as the 3's over here are in row 8 and row 9. So we get a similar thing, slightly more complicated than the 2's, but the same logic. We need to place a 3 somewhere in row 7. And because we can't have a 3 in any of those squares, the 3 must be in one of these 2 positions. And there's a 3 here, so actually we can resolve that. So far this is a very, very nice puzzle. Actually that's a 3 now as well because of these 3's. And there's a 3 down here. So we've got similar patterns with 2's and 3's left over, but we're still making progress. Let's do 4's next. So there must be a 4 in one of these squares. There are only 2 4's in the grid, so I don't think we can go further than that. 5's now. 3 5's in the grid, and interestingly they're all offset, look. So this is a perfect pattern for the slot machine technique that we've talked about on the channel before, but I'm not going to use that technique because some people think it's a bit akin to a guess. I think it's more of an educated guessing technique, and I'll put a card on the screen so if you are interested in the slot machine technique you can revisit it. Let's go to 6's. There must be a 6 in one of these 2 squares. There are only 2 6's as well, I think. Yeah, okay, so 7's then. There are only 2 7's. Must be a 7 either here or here because of these 7's. We can't do anything else with 7's. Hopefully we'll be able to do something else soon. 8's, yes, we can do things with 8's. These 3 8's are in the grid. This square must be an 8. That means there's an 8 in one of those 2 squares. So this is now a 2-8 pair that we've discovered in the central 3x3 block. Now the moment you get this sort of pattern emerging in a block, I always recommend looking upwards and downwards for the digits that aren't appearing in this block yet. So you can see the two obvious candidates to me are the 7 and the 5. So can we learn anything about the 7s and the 5s? Because we can't now put the 7 and the 5 in any of these three squares. So straight away we can pencil mark 7s into those two squares, and that results that this isn't a 7, and this is a 7. Now these 7s mean there's a 7 over here now. Whoa, I didn't mean to do that. I want to just pencil mark 7s. And the 5s as well, look. There must be a 5 in one of those two squares, and there's a 5 here, which means this must be a 5. And now this 4 becomes potent, because look down here. That's the only square left in that block for a 4. That means this is a 4. And there must be a 4 in one of these two squares at the top now. Now these positions here must be 1 and 9. I don't yet know the order, so let's put that in. These two must be 6 and 7 to complete the column. And down here we need the numbers 1, 5 and 9, because we haven't yet learnt anything about those in this 3x3 box. And look, we have a 5 here and a 9 here. So this square, the only option for it is a 1. And the 9 now resolves that there must be a 9 here and a 5 here. So a sudden breakthrough, and we're starting to make inroads into the puzzle. And this must be a 6 to complete this column, and that places the 1 as well. So now we just have to make sure we make maximum use of all this new information. So let's have a quick stare at the grid and see if we can see anything clever as a result of this. I'm going to have a look at row 2 because I've got 6 numbers in it now. You can see I need 6, 7 and 9 to complete this row. So this square can only be a 6 or a 7, and this square can only be a 7 and a 9. This can be anything. 1's here, mean we can pencil mark 1's over on the left hand side. Now here's something nice. Here is something nice. Look at these 5's. Now the 5's interact rather interestingly on that 3x3 block. Although we don't know exactly where the 5's going to be, we know it's in one of these three squares, where we've already got pencil mark 3's and pencil mark 7's. So this tells us that these three squares must be, in some order, a 3, 5, 7 combination. So we certainly need to make note of that. This one can't be a 3. Can we do anything more? Don't know. Now what does this tell us? Well, it tells us these three squares must be 1, 4 and 9 in some order. And we have a 4 here, so that allows us to pencil mark 4's into those two squares. And immediately I do that, I'm scanning up, and I can see that, look, I've now got 4's in the same columns in two different blocks. So again, we can do our little trick now. Where am I going to put a 4 in column 8? Where can it go? It can't go here. It can't go in either of these two squares, so it must be in one of those two positions. And unfortunately, I don't think I know which one. But if we're going to put 1, 4 and 9 into these three squares, and we have a 9 there, look, there must be a 9 in one of these two squares. So let's put that in and see if that does anything. Yes. Now the combination of these 9's now and this 9 means this square can only be a 9. Let's put that in. Now, so 9 now up here, in one of those two squares. This square, to complete this row, has to be a 6 or a 7. And that is interesting indeed. Have a look, have a think about 6s and 7s, because there is something, yeah, there's something gorgeous. And whether Angelina is really Angelina or not, this puzzle is a beautiful puzzle. This puzzle is a beautiful puzzle. Because let's think about 7s. We know that the 7 in row 2 is locked into one of 2 squares. Now if we scan down the grid, look at row 4 of the grid. Where can the 7 go in row 4? Well, it can't go here because of this 7 at the bottom, so it can go here. It can't go here because we've managed to eliminate the 7. We know this is a 2 or an 8. And it can go here. So in fact, the 7s occupy exactly one of 2 positions in row 2 and exactly one of the same 2 columns in row 4. Now this is called an X-wing pattern, and certainly if Angelina's been watching the channel, this is something that it's a pattern we see a lot. And here it's a lovely example, because what does this X-wing allow us to do? Well, what we know is that in exactly one of these positions in the finished grid there will have to be a 7, and exactly one of these 2 positions there would have to be a 7. And you can prove that to yourself just by imagining you're looking at the finished solution and this square was a 7. If this square was a 7, because this square could not be a 7, there would have to be a 7 there, and that would form the first limb of the X. Now the only other state of existence that could exist when we look at the finished solution would be that there was a 7 here. Now if there's a 7 here, because there could not be a 7 there, there would have to be a 7 over there, and that would be the other limb of the X. So we get this X shape, and as we know there's a 7 therefore in one of these 2 positions, there cannot be any 7s in those yellow squares. And similarly on this side, there cannot be a 7 here, 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 or here. Now if you look at the grid, look down here, we managed to eliminate everything from this square apart from a 5 and a 7. This square now cannot be a 7, so we know it's a 5. And actually that is going to be massive. Look at the effect this is going to have on the puzzle. So a 5 here locks a 5 into one of those 2 squares. That's the first thing I can see it does. Now that means this square can no longer be a 3. And the reason it can't be a 3 obviously is that if it's a 3, that would imply that both a 5 and a 6 have to be put into this square, which is impossible. So this is a 3 now. Now we know that these 3 squares were a 3, 5, 7 triple, so once we get these 3's, this square must be a 3, this must be a 7. Let's just have a look at this. This 5 is pointing at this 5 here. This can no longer be a 5, so this is the 5, and the moment we place this 5, this must be a 4. And look at that, that's how I'm landing over here. This is a beautiful puzzle. Now this must be a 4 and this must be a 1. And now look at these 4's, and the 4's we have pencil marked on the right hand side. Well, that means this square must be a 4. So these 2 squares are 1 and 9 in some order to complete this box, and there's a 1 here, so that resolves itself as well. That gives us the 9 and the 1 in these 2 squares. This 9 sees these pencil marked 9's over on the right, so that means 9, 4, 1, 1, 4. And the whole thing is sort of unwinding very, very beautifully. This is a very, very good puzzle. So now, what do we need now? We need 6, 7 and 8 down here. I think there's a variety of ways we can make progress. How should we do this? 7. Let's start up here maybe. These 3 squares have got to be 6, 8 and 9 because of the contents of the row here. So if we look along here, this has to be a 9 now. This has to be an 8. This has to be a 6. Now the moment we get this 6, not only does it unwind the 5 and the 6, but it fixes the 7 into this square. And therefore, because of the X-swing, we know the moment we place a 7 here, there must be a 7 there as well. So in placing this 7, we took the position of a 2, so we can unwind this like that. And these two squares now have to be 1 and 5. You can see that must be in that order. 5 and 6 in that order. This square now needs to be a 7, I think. That unwinds the 7 and 6 over on this side. This must be a 6. This must be an 8. 8, 8. That must be an 8. That must be an 8. And hopefully this should be a 6 here. And if I haven't made a mistake, this square is going to be a 7. And that is a quite gorgeous Sudoku. So thank you, Angelina, for sending it to me. I really hope you're not a troll. I have to say, the thought that there might be a Hollywood superstar watching this channel, well, it fills me with a certain kind of pride. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.